Hey guys, this is Whitney, and welcome back to another special of Spastic Chatter. I have with me today Connie Nelson, and I've had a few conversations with her. I've looked at her website, and she is known as the go-to person when you want to get a mobility scooter. So we thought it would be cool to have a kind of a chat about um, durable medical equipment and what to get when you have cerebral palsy, and I the ins and outs of durable medical equipment, and I'm going to shed some light on my experiences, and Connie will as well as a professional providing this equipment, especially powered mobility scooters. But before we get into that, I'll let Connie introduce herself. So,
hi there, everybody. My name is Connie Nelson. I'm from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and lived here about 30 years. And for 21 of those years, I worked for a nonprofit agency here in Edmonton. It was actually a provincial agency that provided funding for, like Whitney said, durable medical equipment, such as power mobility scooters were some of the main ones that we funded. Some power wheelchairs, electric hospital beds, electric lift chairs, at one time van lifts and scooter hoists, porch lifts, and portable ramping, basically, or removable ramping. It was all recyclable equipment. And I fell in love with that job because I was able to help people help themselves, to get out into the community, especially with a scooter, and do things for themselves instead of being stuck at home and run their necessary errands, but also hopefully have some fun and participate in activities that maybe they used to. So it was very rewarding, but it's a really unique area of expertise. There's no doubt about it.
That's awesome. So, yeah, you have to have like a very good understanding of the equipment, and to be able to sell the product to the consumer. So we had on our first meeting, we kind of talked about the finding the appropriate equipment for someone with a disability, or just someone who needs a scooter or a wheelchair or whatever it may be. What are some, in your opinion? Mm-hmm. Why should I'm trying to gather my thoughts. Why should a person choose either or, a wheelchair or a mobility scooter? Like, what makes you point them in the direction?
Right. Well, a scooter is usually more of an entry-level piece of equipment, more for people who can walk, say, around their own home, sometimes short distances outside, but they have trouble mobilizing longer distance out in the community and running those errands. For example, I had clients who would go shopping, but they'd have to lean on the grocery cart because they couldn't stand up for very long. So it's people with disabilities and medical conditions, they're often in a lot of pain. And also, sometimes they tend to fall because their balance is poor. So depending on the person and the disability, some people maybe need it more than others, but it's more of an entry level. And most scooters are not intended for people who have what they call seating needs. Like they're not necessarily for people with really severe disabilities. You have to have upper body strength and also arm strength and hand strength, to some degree at least, so that you can squeeze the levers and steer it. And it's sort of somewhat like driving a car, but not really.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's 3-wheelers and 4-wheelers, and they've had different types over the years. Some of them 6-wheelers, but for the most part, 3 and 4-wheelers. And so what we would do is we would refer people to an occupational therapist, because occupational therapists are trained in body mechanics and how the body works, how it's supposed to work, and what kinds of equipment assists people to like sit on that piece of equipment for a period of time so that they can actually use it and not fall over or are hurt further.
Yeah.
So the occupational therapist goes with the medical equipment vendor. We hope anyway, to the person's home who needs a scooter, and trial scooters. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, but to keep it short, we would want people to trial scooters and power wheelchairs around their own home community, and in and out of their living situation. Of course, the vendors have a lot of information and knowledge, unless it's somebody really new. It takes a long time to learn this stuff. And I was really blessed to learn a lot of it, not just working with vendors and clients, but I actually had to take care of what we called our loan pool of recycled equipment for 11 years. Like, I actually physically moved it and trialed things with people. So I learned a lot about each individual piece of equipment. And so it was just invaluable. And what a blessing to be able to find.
Oh, you cut it. You cut out. Can't hear you.
Okay.
Okay, I can hear you.
I'll put my headset.
I can hear you now.
Oh, okay.
You went quiet there for a second, and I kind of want to share some personal stories about what you said about a scooter not being for someone that needs seating needs. I have a
Yes.
few funny, I told you I had a few funny stories. So in college, I was for those of you that are just watching this, I am a spastic quadriplegic. So all 4 limbs are affected. Pretty much all my upper body is affected. So I'm one of those that need the specialized seating. But in college, I was like outside, and it started raining really bad, and my power chair shorted a wire because I was out in the rain for too long. So and I could not find a durable medical company that would give me a loan. So I had to buy a mobility scooter outright. And that was like the most difficult thing to drive. It was so uncomfortable because I'm used to driving a joystick. I'm not used to driving like with the handlebars, and I only have one good arm, one good hand. So like that was adjustment, and then after the mobility scooter, I bought one of those travel wheelchairs. The travel motorized wheelchairs that are compact, and you can fold it into your car. And then again, like, the seating was a very big issue because those are not made to be sat in for long periods of time. They're just made for travel. So like that was, and I would get stuck everywhere because they're not meant to go. They're meant to like for short distances. They're not meant to travel all around. And so yeah, that was my experience. But I've also had a very difficult time with insurance, like approving certain stuff. So is it that way? Is it that way in Canada also, where you can only get you can only get durable medical equipment like every 5 years, and you have to like meet the needs or meet the requirements they have for said equipment? Is it like that in Canada
Yes, very
also?
much so. Insuring, I don't think, is too much of a problem. It depends on which insurance agency you go to and how much experience they have with it. What I do recommend to people for insuring is to insure it for replacement value. And the reason being is, as your equipment ages, let's say you're in an accident, not so much somebody runs you over, because then they're responsible, but you run into something and it gets wrecked, something like that. And you have to replace it. The insurance, they pay out like they do on a car. They'll pay you what the value is now, not what it was 3 or 4 years ago. So you have to come up with the rest of the money. So I always recommend replacement insurance if it's, can be done. I forgot the other question you asked me. Equipment. Yes, obtaining equipment. It's 5 years or longer is what the approximate expectation is, because there are people who treat their equipment very well, and there are people who are like Evel Knievel.
I'm the latter. I'm the evil Knievel. I'm the evil Knievel. I will admit that.
Yeah, but the thing is, you're responsible for your equipment, as far as I know. Like I don't know if you've had it funded or you bought it yourself, but when an agency retains ownership, they want to make sure that people take care of it, because it belonged to the agency.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, and so we just we're not going to keep on replacing it after a year. In fact, this sounds horrible to most people, but you had to know this person. There was a lady in a town away from Edmonton who she was on her third scooter. Very heavy duty user. She used to go out, she had a little trailer she hauled behind her to pick up bottles so she could turn bottles in for money. And her scooters she didn't see why she should have to take care of it, because there was another one waiting in the wings, basically. And on her third scooter, about maybe 4 to 6 months after she got it, it went into the shop to be repaired. It was some fairly major repairs. And the vendor phoned us up and said, look, this is ridiculous. Who's going to pay for this? And we didn't, as an agency, because we figured people should be responsible for themselves. And there was possibly some funding through the government, long story, but she'd already used up the amount that, most of the amount, I guess, that she was allowed. And so, as mean as it sounds, because she was abusing her equipment, we actually ended up taking it away from her.
Yeah.
Because she didn't care how it was treated. She just wanted what she wanted. And don't get me wrong, we didn't do that. I think that was the only time ever in my 21 years I took something away from somebody. But I had documented all the things that had happened over the years, and how she treated them. And in some ways, maybe we shouldn't have given her a third one, but we want to be fair to people. And but yeah, and that's the only time. But it's because the agency owned it. When the government of Alberta buys a piece of equipment for somebody with a disability, they also retain ownership, and they basically, as you better take care of it. This is your legs, and they end up in a boat like you did with the repairs that were needed, and so they end up sitting at home for like you said, 3 months, whatever, while it's being repaired, and that's if they can afford it. And we used to tell them right up front that they had to pay for repairs, but they forgot.
See, I'm not aware of any of the loan agency, the loan programs like Canada, like you had, like you were over in Canada. I'm not aware of anything like that in the United States. So
Right.
that's one aspect that is different. I believe that could benefit so many people who just sit at home and don't do, and like they can't do anything because they can't get from place to place. So I
Yeah.
believe that could help a lot of people. Um, One thing that we talked about is what do you tell, or this is hypothetical, what would you tell a consumer, someone that's buying durable medical equipment that is hesitant to buy that equipment because they don't want to seem more disabled than they are? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. There are some people who don't want a power wheelchair, but they'll get a scooter because
Yeah.
it doesn't look so disabled.
Yeah.
Some people don't care. Some people figure other people need it more than they do. They don't, and that's their self-esteem coming out, poor self-esteem. But spending the money is a whole different story. Well, no, it's not actually. One of the main reasons I'm writing this book, and it's called Power Mobility Scooters, an Insider's Guide to Choosing the Right One for Your Needs, because everyone is different in what they need. Now, there's some average people that can just go and try a scooter or two and it works fine for them. But they may have back problems, for example, and I would suggest suspension if they can get it.
Mm-hmm.
Their weight makes a huge difference. Over the years, manufacturers will warranty their equipment for, just as an example, 300 pounds is an average scooter's 300 pounds. Of course, there's some that will handle 450 pounds and others that'll only handle 250. And we came to the conclusion that people should not be within about 50 pounds at least, if not 100 pounds of the weight capacity, depending on whether they tend to gain and lose weight a lot. And the reason for that, because we want the equipment to last as long as it possibly can for the people, so they don't have to pay so many repairs, because the person's weight, any packages they're carrying, and the scooter itself all wear on the parts over time. And the manufacturer, yes, they warranty at, say, 300 pounds, but it's usually 3 years on the frame, which is metal, and a year on the electronics and the mechanical. Well, that's not long. A year goes by in no time. So after that, you don't have the warranty. And if somebody's been abusing it, or if they're too close to the weight capacity, and the scooter breaks down faster, they're going to be responsible. And repairs can be really expensive.
Yeah,
And pick up and and then they do without their legs, right? So that's one thing that we recommended, and it was just from experience, because the better they're taken care of, the longer they last. Okay. Now I'm talking about an average outdoor scooter. The little ones, the ones that are what are called portable, they don't last as long for sure, because they're made of cheaper metal, like an aluminum, and they're made for lighter people and less rugged traveling, like terrain. Okay. Sorry, you have a question? Or
I was just agreeing with you.
yeah, exactly. So in all honesty, besides having a place to store a scooter where it's locked, hopefully, and in a warm place, like here in Alberta, we get winters. It's not too bad right now. It's probably 0, which is 30 above your temperature, but it will get colder. Of course, we want it out of the elements, out of the snow and rain, because like you, the problems you had with that rain was because water got in your joystick, in the electronics. And I've recommended to people just to carry some grocery bags even, and maybe put an elastic on it, so, and you can still maneuver it with the joystick.
Yeah.
But clients who've had several scooters didn't realize that, and I didn't know it for a long time either. And so you try and warn people that, like, this is what happens. And but having a locked place, preferably in your home if you can. But I had clients who would call me, and I'd ask them where they'd store and charge the scooter. And they say, well, I live in a walk-up apartment. I'd store it out in my parking space in the apartment lot, and I'd lock it up, and I would put a tarp over it. Well, scooters are not like bicycles that have a solid frame that you can lock. And especially when you have a disability and you can't bend over or get down on your knees, because the seat can come off. You can't really lock it up, and people can figure it out. And the other thing is yeah, maybe you might put the tarp on, but if it's pouring rain, you're not enjoying yourself, and you're coming home, and do you think you're going to stay and put the tarp on? No, you go in yourself and say, I'll do it later. Well, then the scooter gets wrecked. Yeah. So he insisted on they had to have a place. And the other thing is in winter here in Alberta, let's say they have to store it in a garage. And scooters, even when they're not being used, have to be charged on a regular basis because the battery loses power just sitting. And so if people aren't going to use them in winter, we advise them to bring just the batteries inside, but then they can't be charged, normally be charged without the scooter itself. So I always recommend that not only do you need an appropriate plug-in, if you can have access to the plug-in from inside the house, like you would sometimes a car, a breaker, and you can turn it off and then just turn it on when you need to charge it up. That really helps, because then you don't have to go out in the snow, out to the garage, plug it in, then go out and unplug it later, because you can't leave it plugged in all the time. That's not good either. There's usually 8 hours max type of thing. Yeah. So, it's following the owner's manual, the manufacturer's recommendations. So that's probably the first thing, is some place to store and charge it. And if it's being funded, they would insist, the funding agency would insist on it. Yeah. Because, the equipment's going to get wrecked otherwise. So, but.
You have a book that's, is it available now, or are you still writing the book?
Well, I'm still putting it together because I'm learning. I hate to say it, but I'm kind of technologically challenged at my age, and so I'm learning the processes to do that. And I've kind of been on the move a lot too. So I've got probably 3/4 of it written, but I need to put it into a template and get that ready. And I also I'm hoping to be able to do a workbook as well to go with it, so that people can write down the scooters they've tried and what they don't like about them. And of course, I always advise people to, well, first of all, they need to think about where they want to use it. If they want to use it winter and summer, if they need to take it on a low-floor bus or a paratransit. If they live out in the country, it's different than if they live in the city. Some scooters find it difficult, depending on the size of the wheels and everything, find it difficult to go over grass or gravel, or even climbing hills. Yeah. As an example, there was a gentleman, and he had cerebral palsy. He was just a little guy, maybe 5'2" and 120 pounds maybe. And so he tried a scooter, and for him as a person, it worked. But he lived at the bottom of the river valley in Edmonton, and he had to go up the hill to go get groceries. Well, the regular scooter that he tried wouldn't work for him. So we had to go for something more expensive so that he could use it where he needed to use it. So those kind of things have to be taken into account as well. Yeah. So he had to get something with a stronger motor, or dual motor even. So it's all those things need to be taken into account, like where you live, where you're going to use it, how often you're going to use it, your size. I remember one lady, she was about 260 pounds, and she wanted a little portable scooter so her husband could load it into their van, and maybe they'd go camping twice a year.
Yeah.
And so that's what she trialed, and that was recommended. The occupational therapist didn't know any different, and the vendor, they're just trying to sell something. And so that's what was recommended for her. And I said, look, honestly, where are you going to use it on a regular basis? And that scooter has only got a 250-pound capacity. It's going to break down on you because they're made cheaper. And so I recommend that she have something with 300 or 350-pound capacity for her sake, so it didn't break down so fast, and so she could go where she wanted to, because a little one would shake her bones, like shake her all over the place. So yeah, so it's just it's a learning experience, and it's just fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's
Well, you seem like the go-to person to go for mobility scooters. Where to close out the episode, because we're gonna hit the 30-minute mark, I think, pretty soon.
wow.
But where can people get a hold of you?
Okay, I actually set up a new email address for that purpose, and it's Power Mobility Scooters 21 at gmail.com.
Okay, and I'll put that in the description, so if anyone wants to reach out to you, they can.
Yes, absolutely. And I plan on running courses as well on this. And I am probably going to provide an information session first that'll be free to let people know, and then run a course after Christmas sometime.
That's awesome.
On this stuff. Yeah. So it's because spring's coming faster than we think, and it takes a long time for some of this to sink in, and trialing is essential around your own home and community. Opening doors, if you don't have automatic doors,
I
and
totally
doing that
agree.
yourself.
I totally agree with all that.
Yeah.
But thank you for reaching out to me and wanting to be on Spastic Chatter. I really think that this was beneficial for people who are thinking about potentially getting a mobility scooter, because cerebral palsy is a broad spectrum. So it goes from people who walk to they have to use power wheelchairs. So there's a broad spectrum. So I think this would benefit a lot of my viewers. So I want to thank you again, and for those of you watching, if you want to be on an episode of Spastic Chatter, there's always a link in the description, or you can comment on this video. And I will check back next week for another episode, or for the regular episodes of Spastic Chatter. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hold on. Oh, hold on. Hold on.